Hi, all. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Lisa, and today's topic is all about PDHPE. I'll be going through the game sense approach and also the New South Wales syllabus and how important this subject is, and also my experience with the tutorials and the units. So, why is PDHPE such a valuable curriculum? To me, it's not just about sports and teaching children movement and skill. It's a subject about lifestyle, building relationships, and overall well being of a child. To me, the subject PDHPE has so much relevance to the world outside of school because the curriculum objectives focus on promoting a sense of personal identity and building relationships, which is important for children as they need these social skills and interpersonal skills to interact with one another and be a part of the community. I feel like these skills also help them with building friendships and it builds confidence within themselves so they can apply this to other subjects, but also it translates to life skills later on. I also find that the objectives they aim for children to lead healthy and safe lifestyles. And by being active and participating in sport, it promotes children to engage and be included. I feel that sport has so many dynamics in it, and children are able to learn to assess situations and adapt to different situations. So I find that these are very important life skills to have, and that's why PDHP is such an important subject. One of the teaching approaches is game sense approach, and it's a teaching pedagogy that involves teaching a skill or sport through games. The games can be designed and modified by the teacher or the student, and it can progress in intensity and skill level as the children begin to learn or acquire the skill. Essentially, the series of games will teach them how to play a sport or develop a skill. So, this teaching method is inquiry based and it involves indirect teaching. So, the student is at the center and it's learner centered, and the children are empowered to learn through play. Light 2012 defines the game sense approach as a sequence of games or designing a game to achieve a particular outcome, and it involves asking questions, reflection, and opportunities for group discussion and collaboration. So he had a framework, and the framework involved designing the learning environment, emphasizing questions to generate dialogue, providing opportunities for collaborative formulation, and developing a supportive socio-moral environment. So I find the game sense approach has many benefits because it allows for collaboration and inclusivity, which is really important for a child's well-being. It does promote interaction and help build in relationships as well because it promotes the children to have discussions with each others about game tactics, and it's relative to the strand health, well-being, and relationships. The game sense approach also encourages children to lead healthy and safety active lifestyle because it promotes children to participate. And because they are not playing, but because they are learning through games and learning through play, it is more fun and it is more enjoyable, and this will motivate students to continue being active and participating in sports in the future. The game sense approach also allows for modification. So this helps students in all different skill sets, and this allows them to improve not just on their skill, but incorporating that skill into different contexts. So as it's inquiry-based learning, students are able to create and compose different movements and explore ways their movements can affect their performance. Light and colleagues 2014 also found that game sense approach was highly relevant to the New South Wales syllabus because its lessons revolved around prior knowledge and connectedness. So students were able to apply their prior knowledge and also connect new and learned knowledge and new learned skills and apply this to new areas. And this is a concept of knowledge integration, which is really important for student learning. I'll now reflect on my experience with 4 tutorials in the PDHPE unit. For my first tutorial, I had a prac on PDH and I came into class without knowing anybody prior. I did feel quite nervous because I wasn't an active person. I didn't play any sports outside uni, but Yasmin made the class feel very inclusive and she had activities set up and we were put into groups. So the lesson was essentially based on volleyball, but we started off in smaller groups, and I think it was groups of 4, and we were just throwing the ball to one another in our group. Yasmin came around and asked us how we could modify this activity to make it easier or harder, and in our group we thought about different modifications that we could do. We thought about throwing the ball to different people, not the same person we threw to last time, or throwing the ball further back. And from this activity alone, I already felt included, but I also felt empowered in the ability to make changes to the game and have my opinion heard. So we worked together and I was able to initiate relationships with these people, and I now have bonds with these people in other classes. So thinking about the game sense approach, this was definitely inclusive. And as Light 2012 states, the basic game sense approach is to start with simple games, and this takes out the stress on the technique because it allows players to engage in the game more and also engage with others. I also found that by modifying the game, it allowed me to think about the space utilization and how many players we had and how we could use this to cater to different learning abilities when I use game sensing approach in teaching. So after this, we wanted to play handball and verse other teams. I found this super fun and also competitive, and it allowed us to talk to one another about tactics and where to position ourselves. So I found that everyone was on a different skill set, but everyone was still involved and everyone was able to participate and have a go. So when I was reflecting on this moment, I feel as a pre-service teacher, it's really critical to see how game sense approach can facilitate conversation and help build relationships. For the second tutorial, the overall theme was Athletics Carnival, and in this tutorial there was a sequence of games that we participated in. It was super fun and had a lot of skill incorporation as well. One of the games was Relay, where we played cat and mouse and crows and cranes. Yasmin demonstrated the technique for holding the badminton and how to pass it on safely, and she also demonstrated the starting position for running. So we learnt the skills and incorporated them while playing the game, and Yasmin would provide feedback while we were playing. I found this more effective in my learning experience, and I was able to grasp the skills better than compared to if I was just watching the demo. And as Light 2012 states, teacher-directed approaches often teach skills before the game, whereas with the game sense approach, the skills are learnt in and throughout playing the game. So once this skill is learnt and mastered in the game becomes more easier for the student, the teacher or the student can modify it to improve the skill and increase the intensity. After this, we then went into small groups and did some throws with vortex balls, which was meant to resemble javelin throws. And Yasmin also came around and asked us how we could modify and make it harder. I found that this method of teaching prompted collaboration and a safe environment where I felt like I was able to speak up and come up with ideas. And for me, it felt more engaging and it allowed, I guess, a space for myself and also the teacher to co-learn with one another and to listen to each other's ideas. I also found that with this type of approach, it allows teachers to help students meet the syllabus objectives, where they develop skills and competence in creativity across different activities, and also demonstrate an understanding of movement and skills in different contexts. So, for example, I was able to apply learning the skill of throwing the vortex to potentially learning how to throw javelin, and also use this throwing technique in other sports. I really enjoyed how all the mini games in that one lesson ultimately taught me the basic skills I needed to participate in different activities in an athletics carnival. And this is something that's really important in the syllabus because it's important for students to gain confidence in their movement and actively want to participate. For my third tutorial, Yasmin gave us the opportunity to lead our own game sense approach activities, and afterwards we were able to reflect upon our modifications and discuss the implications it had, what worked well and what didn't. For me, this class was very insightful as a pre-service teacher because it allowed me to understand all the complexities involved in planning and modifying activities and games. It got me thinking about how many players, how to divide the students into groups, the number of balls used, the size and the shape of the area that would be playing the game in, and I needed to consider all the modifications and all the rules because ultimately it needed to encourage the students to learn a particular outcome or to meet a particular objective. So one of the activities that we did was we needed to aim to knock a ball in the middle of a square using other balls, and we thought that swapping a softball for a basketball would make the activity easier for a student, but in fact we found that it actually made it harder for the students to aim because the basketball was so much lighter than the softball and it kept rolling and didn't stop, so it didn't stay in the lines. So being able to experiment with different equipment and space was really fun and creative, but it was also challenging. And this class allowed me to be a self-directed learner and problem solve as well. And as Light and his colleagues 2014 state, it's important for teachers to be able to get students thinking about different strategies they need in games to improve and meet their outcome. And these could include things like speed, direction, velocity, which is things that they learn in maths, and it also draws on other KLAs and other curriculum. For my final tutorial reflection, I had a theory lesson on physical education, and the topic was body education. Being back in the classroom was a change from the sports centre we were in for the past few weeks, but it was still engaging class. And Yasmin promoted and offered a space of open conversation and questions regarding the topic. It was a sensitive topic, but I felt I was comfortable. I was in a comfortable environment where I could ask questions and also listen to my peers. Yasmin discussed a lot of teaching strategies to use in teaching this topic, such as having a question box and examples of previous PAC students and how they taught the lesson. The lesson also allowed me to reflect upon my own teaching strategies and how to meet the objectives in the outcomes of knowledge and understanding, where students are able to enact and strengthen health, safety, and well-being. An example was incorporating communities and organizations such as Healthy Harold to assist children in leading and living healthy lives. Reflecting on the theory lesson, I found it's important for teachers to meet the curriculum objectives but also allow time for questions and a space of feeling safe. It's important to incorporate things that make it interesting and engaging for students to learn as well. To conclude the podcast, I'm just going to talk about my overall experience of the unit. My participation throughout the semester has put me in a position as a learner experiencing game sense approach in the classroom, but it also gave me insight as a pre-service teacher and how to facilitate this approach in teaching PDHPE. Being the learner, I could see the benefits game sense approach has on promoting inclusivity and collaboration, but I could also see the challenges it has on teachers in terms of lesson structuring and game modification. One take that I have from these lessons is to always manipulate and modify the game to meet a goal or an outcome for a student. Just like Yasmin showed us in the tutorials, she had an objective to teach us for the lesson, whether it be a lesson on volleyball or athletics, all the little games that she planned and the activities along the way progressively got us to meeting that outcome or learning that particular sport. For me, the learning activities did relate to the curriculum and unit content. So, through active participation and learning the theory, I felt that PDHPE as a holistic subject was able to relate to well-being, sport, and theory. And after doing this unit, it has really given me motivation and more confidence to teach this subject. I feel less intimidated because being a co learning teacher also gives me room to improve and learn as I go. And I don't feel like I have to be an athlete to be a PE teacher. I also learnt so many teaching strategies and approaches, and I will definitely use the game sense approach in my classroom and going forward to teach. So that's the end of my podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening, and thank you for listening to the podcast.